everybody. Hope you're having a great morning. I have a special guest, Jerry Teixeira is coming on. We're gonna do some movement, so no equipment necessary, but I'll let you guys start coming on. Let me see if I can get him. Hello, hello. Hi, we have a great show. I've got Jerry Teixeira coming on, body weight training, no equipment necessary. We're gonna talk about a lot of different stuff with healthy aging. So let me see if I can get him on here. Here he is. Hi, everybody. This is JT body weight strength training. That's what we're going to be doing this morning. Yay. Hi, Jerry.
Hello.
Oh, let me go like this. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much for coming on, Jerry. Or I'm going to call you JT because that's what people really call you, right? Jerry Teixeira. Listen, I tried to pronounce your name for the longest time. I couldn't get it out. I had to spell it like phonetically. But JT is joining us today, you guys, and we're going to do some body weight training. But tell me a little bit, Jerry, how you got into doing this. How did you get about doing this body weight training? Because you have a backstory that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so I went into the military right out of high school, and we did a lot of body weight push-ups, pull-ups, that type of stuff in the military. And then I ended up getting out, and I had always been like lean and never had a problem with weight. And I kept exercising and working out regularly when I got out of the military. And around 26 years old, my wife and I had our first kid, and I gained like 50 pounds in 2 years. And all the while, I was still exercising 6 days a week. The only thing that changed is, obviously I started eating more, but I learned the hard way that exercise is not your primary tool for weight loss, right? That has to come from diet.
Yeah.
And so, that's what opened my eyes to like, I really need to address diet and food quality and all this other stuff, not just, exercise. So I fixed my diet, got off the standard American diet, cut out the fast food, all that kind of stuff. And when I got out of the military, I started weightlifting. So I was going to a commercial gym. I kind of ditched the body weight stuff. And then after we had the first kid and I gained all that weight, it was very difficult at that point to continue to work out with a new baby at home. So my wife and I, years later, ended up having our second kid on the way. And having gone through that experience the first time, I decided, okay, I already know when we have the new baby, I can't just like, sorry, I'm going to go to the gym 6 days a week and take the baby, So I thought, in order for me to not balloon up again this time, I need to make sure that I have strategies to keep my diet in check, even though we got a new baby. And then how am I going to exercise? Not so much for the weight aspect of it, although exercise is protective of weight regain. When you look at the studies, exercise is very protective in long-term, not yo-yoing and maintaining your weight loss. So I always like to tell people, don't exercise because you think it's going to help you lose weight. It can, but the problem is when you hit a plateau and you're not losing weight and you're exercising, you're going to get frustrated and you're going to stop exercising.
Right.
And the problem with that is exercise is probably the strongest tool for longevity and health span that we have. And so if you stop exercising because you're frustrated because you're not losing weight with it, your insulin sensitivity is going to pay a price. You're going to, carbohydrate tolerance is going to go down. You're increasing your risk of Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, all this other stuff. So for me, going through the experience I went through, the second time around, I knew, okay, I'm not going to keep exercising because of how it's going to make me look, although that's okay. It was more along the lines of now, our second kid was years later, I was 35, and it was like, okay, I want to make sure I'm healthy, so I need to figure out how to make exercise sustainable. Yeah. And our first kid, we put our first kid in gymnastics when she was 3, and at this point, she was already 9. So what happened is, as I sit there and watch my daughter do gymnastics, I was seeing all these little kids developing these incredible physiques at like 9 and 10 years old. I mean, it's like super, super impressive how fit they are.
Very strong.
And there's not a single weight in the gymnastics gym other than bands and stuff for rehabilitation and things like that. So I was watching these little athletes get very strong, very fit without a traditional gym. And so it just clicked for me. I thought, you know, if my daughter can do it, I can do it, you know. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready for my son to come, and I'm going to switch to all bodyweight stuff at home. So I bought a doorway pull-up bar, just one of those basic $20 pull-up bars like at Walmart or whatever. And I started out thinking, okay, I'm going to do this. And it was super humbling because even though I was fairly proficient at like your bench pressing, squatting, traditional weightlifting stuff, but I was terrible at the bodyweight stuff. And what a big part of that was my mobility was bad. Even though I could squat, quote unquote, a lot of weight, I could bench press, things like that. My hips were tight, my hamstrings were tight. Like my shoulders, my mobility in my shoulders was terrible. So in retrospect, I'm really happy that I stumbled onto it, because now at 43, so I've been doing this for like 8 years, my back never hurts, my joints don't hurt, my hips don't hurt, all these little aches and pains.
Yeah.
Right, I was having these aches and pains in my mid-30s that I attributed to, well, I'm just getting older, which now I look back and laugh because 35 is young, you know?
Yeah, I'm 55, so 35 is young. That's, you know, but
Right.
That's interesting that you say that, because that is one of the reasons why, I mean, if we take out the exercise in terms of what we look like in the mirror, right? We're not doing this for vanity, but we're doing this for longevity. And how do you keep your joints mobile and your muscles strong and your balance on point so that you don't, you know, you're not falling. Falls are the #1 cause of death over the age of 65. How crazy is that? But that's what the data says. So if you're an older person, midlife and beyond, and you fall because either your balance is off or just, you know, you have an accident or something, if you break a bone or you tear a ligament or you tear a joint, you hurt a joint, your rate of recovery is so much slower, and the statistics say oftentimes you'll never get back to where you were. Now, I don't buy that statistic, but to be able to protect ourselves and make us functioning right up until the end, that's what I love about what you do, because you don't need a gym. You don't need a bunch of fancy equipment. I mean, I know you use your bars, but this is, you know, when I first stumbled onto you, I thought, this is Jerry is the reason why I can like point to some of my clients who say, I don't have time to work out. I don't have equipment to work out. I don't feel good walking into a gym. And I say, check out this guy. You only need body weight and, you know, a backyard, and you can do basically anything. So I love what you're doing about that. So should we get up and move a little bit? Like, I'd like to find out, like, what are some of the types of movements that you do for, that you would suggest for people in midlife in order to stay functionally healthy throughout our lifespan?
So, a few concepts that I think are important for exercise, whether you're training body weight, you're lifting, you know, weights or whatever. There's a common problem I see, and something I did myself also, is your joints. Your shoulder is the most, you know, complex joint in the body. Hips are second. Your joints are designed to move through a full range of motion in different planes of motion. So, to give you an example, a lot of times we go to a gym and we use the bench press machine because we feel it's a little safer than a barbell bench press or whatever. And the bench press is a fine exercise, but the problem is when you bench press, your shoulders are retracted. So they're locked into place, and then you're doing a press. There's nothing wrong with that. But as you do that press, people are not going through full shoulder protraction during a bench press. So they are keeping the shoulder retracted throughout the entire exercise. The problem with that is that you also need to train your shoulder under load through full protraction, from back to front, from front to back, from bottom to top, from top to bottom. You need to train it in a rotational pattern. So when we think about strength is a very, very strong, among the strongest correlates to longevity in humans. So one thing I try to tell people and clients and just followers in general is, you can think of aging as the loss of fitness. and I don't just mean physical fitness, I mean mental fitness, emotional fitness, physical fitness. So, you know, when you're 20 or 21, even if you've not taken good care of yourself, for the most part, we are more robustly fit, even if we don't exercise. And then every year that passes, we slowly decline in that fitness level. So when you mentally shift from I'm exercising to look good, and that's totally fine. I care what I look like, you care what you look like. It's totally fine. So nobody needs to feel bad for wanting to look good. It's totally fine. But when we shift away from that as being our primary driver, and we think, here's why I exercise, it really helps with consistency. So like there's days I don't want to lift. There's days I don't want to go jog. I don't want to walk, run, whatever. Like it's normal, right? It's totally normal. But I always tell myself when I'll be in the middle of exercising and I'll be like, hey, take that, cancer. Like you're not coming for me, you know?
Yeah.
Obviously you can still get different diseases, but exercise reduces your likelihood of all of it. It increases your skin elasticity. It makes sure there's all these benefits. So if you remember all those and you just tell yourself, this is what I'm getting out of this set, this exercise, this walk, this jog, this whatever that I'm yoga session, whatever it is. I just want to make sure people understand that like for a long time we knew how exercise is good for us, but most people think, okay, I lift weights because I want to build muscle and look good, right? If you think that looks good, or I run because I want to lose fat, but we just stop there and we don't make the connection to how incredibly beneficial it is for health. And so that is what brought me into working primarily with people at midlife and older, is because we naturally start caring more about that stuff at that age. I started caring more about it. I started talking more about it in my content. I know you talk about it. And so when you exercise, one of the biggest things is think about the joint you're working, and if you're taking that joint through a full range of motion. So for, like I mentioned, and I'll demonstrate, I don't know if you, can you see me? Let me scoot back and lower this. I'm gonna scoot back. Okay, so I'm gonna show you when you do push-ups, which a lot of I see trainers online also, and a lot of people have like a quote-unquote beginner's routine, and they'll have like push-ups, a set of 10, set of 12. Like that's, first of all, that's not for a beginner, because a lot of beginners can't do one push-up, let alone like 10 or 12. Right. And so,
and you guys, it's better to do one correct push-up than 10 push-ups that's going to cause an injury that's going to keep you away from movement, right? So form is super important. And we had a question earlier about shoulder impingements, which happen so frequently as we age, because the shoulder is one of those joints that moves forward, it moves out, and it moves in a circular motion, just like our hips. And so those are one of the areas that have a lot of injury. So go ahead, JT, sorry.
The reason that we are more prone to having shoulder impingement and things like that is our modern lifestyles, where we have a lot of chair-supported sitting, and we're looking at screens, shoulders rounded forward, in the car driving. Those are not natural. This is not a natural way to live. If you look at how we evolved, if you look at modern hunter-gatherers or pre-industrial populations, they don't spend time sitting in high-back chairs. And so what that means, the reason that's important, is their musculoskeletal system has to support itself against gravity more throughout the day than ours do. So, for example, if we're sitting in an ergonomic office chair, our back is being supported, there's lumbar support, there's all these things that are disengaging our muscles. So it's not that those things are necessarily bad, it's that your musculature, your musculoskeletal system, it's being disengaged. And so that's weakening your posture, that's weakening your ability to, function against gravity. So that's one of the reasons why just walking, standing, believe it or not, just standing is better for your health than sitting. So the more you can stand, whether that's a standing desk, I know that's not super comfortable for a lot of people. So it can be doing dishes, doing laundry, it can be walking around the office. The more just general movement you can put into your day, spaced frequently throughout your day, the more it's going to help our modern lifestyle resemble that of what we evolved for prior to the Industrial Revolution. So it doesn't have to be, and I try to teach as much as I can on my content, it doesn't have to be the 45-minute
Right.
workout every day or the hour-long workout. It can literally be little micro workouts that can look, I mean, I've got 2 kids, I'm a dad, and I'll be in the backyard and I'll put food on the grill or whatever, and I'll be doing squats while I'm grilling. And so, yeah, my workout's not like hardcore, we're going to battle. It's like, I know sometimes people will look at me because I'm fairly fit or muscular or whatever, and they get a false impression about how I work out. And I very much fit my workouts into my day, not revolve my entire day around trying to work out, right?
Yeah, I love that you do that, JT. I do the same thing, but I do, like, I'm sure there are times when you like crush it in the gym, or you have an hour-long workout or 45-minute workout. I have those a few times a week. The rest of my workouts are just, you know, throughout the day. I could be cooking at the stove and I'm doing calf raises.
Right.
I could be brushing my teeth and I'm doing donkey kicks on one leg, you know, balancing on one leg. So it's incorporating that movement throughout the day. And I'll tell my husband at the end of the night, gosh, I didn't get to work out today. And he's like, what are you talking about? You just did this, you did this. And I just don't realize it, because even when you're sitting in a chair, now you can sit in a chair a couple different ways, right? You can squish everything and lean back, which is nothing. Or even sitting upright in a chair, having to use your core to keep your spine straight is it's a lot more movement, technically, because you're using those stabilizing muscles than it is leaning back. So you can incorporate this type of little movement throughout the day that is associated with, like you said, cooking something on the grill, or for me, brushing my teeth or cooking over the stove. So I love that, because it's not as inaccessible as what people really think.
Right. When you start thinking of, when you disconnect, like we talked about earlier, when you disconnect weight loss and everything from exercise, and you start to realize the overall general health benefits of exercise, and not just structured exercise again, but physical activity, you just start to realize, like, okay, being a sedentary individual is as damaging or more, depending on the data that are coming out, what study you look at, than chain smoking for a lifetime.
Totally.
So it's that bad for you, right? And the problem is our modern lifestyles are very much technology displacing all the movement. So we don't have to get up and change the channel anymore. We don't have to, you can have food delivered to your house from anywhere now, right? You can Uber your food or whatever. So if we work from home, my wife works from home. It's like, if you work from home now, post-pandemic, it's a lot more common. People's step counts, because it happened to me, people's step counts are like 4,000 a day, which is abysmal, right? And so our society is being set up increasingly so for us to be unhealthy if we just exist within society, where in the past that wasn't the case, right? Your grandparents, my grandparents, they just existed and they got like twice as much movement as we do without trying. So if you understand that, you can say, okay, I know I need to move more. And it doesn't need to be at a gym. It doesn't need to be structured exercise. So, for example, if you work from home or at an office, let me get up and use the restroom, and I'll walk to the furthest restroom from where I'm at. And you go to the bathroom a few times a day, boom, you just add probably 500-600 steps. You'd be surprised how fast it adds up. Go walk to the mill and check your nail every day instead of once every 3 or 4 days. It sounds cliched, but park farther away, use the stairs. You'd be surprised when I tell people, just do that basic stuff.
Yeah.
Set a little alarm and take a 5-minute water break and walk around the office, walk around the hallways, and then go back to your desk. I have people that'll be at 10,000 steps from 5,000 steps without exercising, just doing that stuff.
Well, so, I have these little tricks that I do. If I take a phone call, I just don't sit down. So I'll take a phone call and I'll walk around, pace around while I'm on the phone, because sitting down and on the phone, you're just not doing anything. So every time I get a phone call, I have it on speakerphone and I'm walking. When I go upstairs, I run up the stairs. I don't just, let me just casually go up the stairs. I'm going up the stairs as quickly as I can. And that's probably, I don't know, 15, 16 times a day, just running up as fast as I can. These little tiny bursts of movement and exercise throughout the day, I think oftentimes for me are a lot more beneficial than just the 45 minutes to an hour in a gym and then sitting on my ass.
Right, and there's research so you can look at continuous exercise, so the 45-minute session, and then you can look at that same amount of movement divided over 45 minutes in 3 to 5 minute increments, for example. And what research is showing is that the benefits to health from a cardiometabolic standpoint and all that are indistinguishable. So if you space it out, and I even have some people, if they have the right mind for this, I tell them, write your little exercises down as part of your checklist today. You know, you got to get milk, you got to do this, or whatever. Just make a checklist, and as you go through the day, let me do my squats real quick, because it can just be body weight squats, just some walking lunges. It can be basic stuff. And then a lot of people find that, oh, now it's more bite-sized, it's not intimidating. And because I have, for example, I have a client who's a doctor with 3 kids, super busy, got a clinic and all this stuff. And the checklist didn't help her because she's like, by the time I get home, I have half of it done. So I only need 15 more minutes. So when I get home, I'm like, okay, let me just finish this up. And I already got started on it, instead of always thinking I needed this 45-minute block, and then life happens and I don't have the 45 minutes, so I think, well, I can't do it, so I'll just do it tomorrow. And then something else happens, and I push it off. So yeah, I think people, number one, that mindset of needing the big workout, which is like you said, when you have the time, great, do it. But when you don't, it doesn't need to be the big workout. And then the other thing is, people needlessly overcomplicate exercise, right? So it's, you know, what we need, if you think about it, is every year that you age, past 40 especially, you lose. It's about 10% per decade. It accelerates markedly at about 60. But from 40 to 60, you're losing about 10% of your muscle mass per decade, which is, it's happening slow enough that it's like the frogs in a pot.
And just for my viewers that you know have seen me do past things on increasing your metabolism, remember that muscle mass, they are calorie burning machines. The more muscle you have, the more calories it takes to keep that muscle and additional calories to grow that muscle. So it becomes something that stimulates and boosts your metabolism. So as we age, part of the reason why we accumulate fat around the midsection, and listen, I'll have a whole other live on that, but part of that reason is in that decrease of muscle, fat starts infiltrating the muscle called sarcopenia, and then it's really difficult to lose weight after that. So muscle is our friend, you guys. So we want to make sure that we're working that. As our muscles decline, we need to fight against that and trick our bodies into creating more muscle. And that is movement, and that is weight-bearing movement. Right?
The good news with that is that regardless of age, and this is true even in 90-year-olds, regardless of age, you can increase your muscle mass and you can increase your strength. So it's never, you can do it significantly. So it's never too late to start. But with that being said, post about 60 years old, that decline happens faster. So ideally what you want to do is start building that reserve of muscle mass earlier so that you have a higher peak, so that as that decline starts, and ideally you're still exercising, slowing the decline, but you want to try to get yourself in the best position you can from a muscle mass, muscle strength and function perspective. And if you're a woman, the nice thing is, regardless of what you hear, women can build muscle efficiently, and they can build muscle efficiently after menopause, and none of that crap matters. What builds muscle is mechanical tension, meaning stress on your muscle, right? And what you need to do is you need to make sure that the most common mistake I see with women is that they don't use a challenging enough load, whether it's body weight, whatever the case is. They don't use a challenging enough load, and so, or they don't go close enough in proximity to what you would call failure on a set. And what's important, because obviously injury prevention is job number one. If you get hurt and you miss time and you're going backwards, the injury could be persistent. We don't want that either. But in order to stimulate new muscle tissue to grow, you need to make sure that your sets, every set you do for resistance training, are done at a high intensity of effort, meaning you've got to try hard on that set. And that set needs to get close to what we would call failure. You don't have to actually fail, but you do need to get close. So what that means is, if you were to take, just say a weight, whatever the weight happened to be, 10 pounds or something, if you curled that thing 15 times, and on the 15th rep, you could not get it all the way up, that's the true point of failure. That's a hard set. Every rep that you do, you're recruiting what are called muscle fibers. And you need to keep recruiting muscle fibers until you get to a point that enough muscle fibers are recruited that's going to stimulate a response that as you rest and recover from that workout, you're going to build a little bit of new muscle tissue and a little bit of new muscle tissue, a little bit of new muscle tissue with each workout. So more common in women than men is you do the set and you do it with good form, you do everything right, but it starts to burn a little like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to put the weight down.
Yeah.
And the problem is that's the point where you should have thought, okay, this is starting to burn. It's getting tough. I need to get two more or one more. Because
yes.
That's the point when those are the reps that matter. And if you're not pushing yourself a little bit, and yes, it's a little uncomfortable, but if you think about it, I've not done needling, but I'm sure it's a little uncomfortable, right? Like anything that you do that is going to stimulate an adaptive response in your body, it has to be uncomfortable or there won't be an adaptation that happens. That means that your exercise is still healthy for you. It's still good to move no matter what. But if it's movement for the purpose of, hey, I want to get stronger and build more muscle, then you need to make sure you push yourself past the point where it's uncomfortable a little bit, and you got to get close to failure. But like I said, you don't have to go all the way to failure. That's pretty clear in the literature. So if you want to fail, great. If you like that,
yeah. But that last one should be super hard to do. You shouldn't be able to like talk through a full exercise. It should be like, oh, the last one is really difficult to do. And that's when you know, like, okay, I've pushed myself hard enough to where I'm going to make a difference in my muscle mass, in my body composition.
The encouraging thing for men and women, but I think for women especially, is a long time ago, there was, actually not that long ago, but there was a common misconception that like, you got to lift heavy if you want to build muscle, right? You got to lift heavy if you want to build muscle. And that's actually not true. What they're finding is that as long as you take, and this is why my last point was important, as long as you take the set close to failure, it was a high effort set, you can use a light weight. So you can use a lighter load, and you can use that weight for repetitions or your body weight for repetitions up till around 30 in the low 30s, meaning you could literally curl a weight 30 times and it will still stimulate the same hypertrophic or muscle growth response as a heavier weight. The downside is you're going to build strength better as your rep range is lower. So if you're doing, let's say, 8 or 9 reps, you're going to get stronger faster than if you're doing 20 or 25 rep sets. However, both of those things do build strength. So if you do a set of something and you're doing 5 pounds, 10 pounds, whatever, 15 pounds, if you're doing a set of something, or maybe you're doing a push-up progression, if you do 9 and you think, okay, the next weight feels too heavy for me, and you work with that same weight till you get to 10 and 11, you going up in reps is you getting stronger. You're still getting stronger, so don't feel like you need to go to a heavier weight at any certain point. But once you start getting into the 30-ish rep range on something, number one, it's not fun. If you've ever done a 30 rep set of anything, it's really not fun. So
I used to do a 25 set reps on everything. And then but I would get to the point of failure, and I've since switched the way that I work out. Sometimes I will do 20 reps, but then the next time I work out, I'm doing 5 or 8 because I'm going a much heavier. So I'm building strength. I'm building endurance with the 20 reps situation, but I'm building real strength with the 5 to 8 to 10 reps with a much heavier weight.
So both are effective for building muscle. So I just want people to understand that there's two ways they can go about increasing their muscle mass, which is important as you age. And then when you go toward increasing strength, both will also increase strength. But as you get lower in the rep range, the strength happens faster. So that's going to be where you say, okay, I want to focus on strength a little more. I'm going to do 10, 12, 14 reps. So just a little lower on the rep ranges than you would for, the higher rep.
Can we get up, JT, and start doing do you have examples of things that you like to do at home? I'll try to move my camera back too, and I'll do them with you. But what do you think are your go-to moves that you do, for people in midlife that you think would be beneficial?
Okay, so I think what would be beneficial is there's certain muscles that tend to be weak and are not well addressed in lots of common workout programs that I see. And so one of those will be the core muscles. And the reason for that is your core is not just your abs. So you see a lot of people or a lot of workouts that are like ab blaster, core blaster, whatever. And it's tons of spinal flexion. So it's crunches and toe touches and all this stuff where you're bending forward. That's fine. But you got to remember that you have lateral core muscles. So you have muscles here on the side, and then your muscles of your core also extend around the back into the lumbar area, and they're responsible for increasing stability of the spine under load. And really, from an injury prevention standpoint, you want to train the entirety of your core, not just the front. You want the sides, you want the back. Yes. And so
the fronts, just to interrupt you for a second, the front muscles, you guys, the 8-pack, those are the muscles that, like, you know, that looks great in a bikini. But when we're looking at the transverse muscles, the ones that wrap around, and those obliques, that's what's going to really give us the stability and the balance that's going to take us through old age, right?
Right. And so one of my favorite exercises, but the trick is you got to do it well, you got to do it properly. Just like you mentioned, form's really important, because if you don't do it right, it can load the shoulder in a disadvantageous way and potentially increase your injury risk. But one of the best exercises would be the side plank. Okay, and we'll demonstrate that with the side plank. And then for the front, one of my favorite exercises is what's called a hollow body hold. And that's something that's a bread and butter exercise for gymnasts. So, and then there's a reverse plank, and the reverse plank will actually work those lumbar muscles, the muscles around the back of the core. So what I'll do is I'll show you each of those. We can do them together.
Yeah.
And these are exercises that don't require any flexion of the spine, right? So these are exercises that even if you have low back injury, if you have previous injury history, for most people, they will be comfortable and they'll be able to do this very safely. And these are very good exercises to start and build proficiency with. And then once you, and with my clients, sometimes it's within 4 to 8 weeks, you see big improvements. Low back pain will start to get better. Other things start to get better. And these exercises will lay a good foundation to transfer to whatever other exercises you want to do. So
I think that's important. I think if you had foundational exercises that build strength, that then help you transition into more complicated, I think that's a great idea. Okay, so go ahead, Jared.
Okay, so let me move this down just a little bit more. Sorry about that.
And if you guys are just tuning on, listen, you don't need any equipment. You just need a floor. That's all you need. So let's start moving.
Okay, so for a hollow body, you can see what I'm doing here. You're just going to lay flat on the ground. You're going to have just like, think about if you were going to do a crunch, but you're going to have your feet flat on the ground. And what we're going to do is you're going to press your spine down, so you can see I'm raising my head and my shoulders just a little bit, so that my lumbar spine's flat against the ground, which is what you're trying to do in a hollow body, is flat against the ground. Then all you're going to do is pick your feet up about 6 inches off the ground, and then pick your hands up off the ground as well. And you're just going to hold that. That's going to be the basic. Now, if you really need to, when you're first starting out, you can put your head down. But if you pick it up just a little, even if it's just a few inches, you're going to feel your core contract. And the goal of the hollow body, you are contracting the core. It's called compression. So you're compressing the core, which is putting pressure, intra-abdominal pressure, on your lumbar spine. The
lumbar spine, for those who don't know, this is the lower part of the spine that kind of arches. So what we're doing is you're pressing that spine to where the spine makes contact with the mat or the floor.
Right. So if you do this, you'll feel your core compress. And the reason that this exercise is so foundational in gymnastics is this is the exercise that's going to teach you how to properly brace your core for every other exercise that you do, whether it's push-ups, whether it's squats, heavy deadlifts, whatever you get into later. This is the way that you brace your core and protect your lumbar spine. A lot of people get injured exercising with their low back, and it's because they don't know how to brace properly. They don't have intra-abdominal pressure stabilizing the spine, and that can lead to injury. So this is going to work your core, and it's going to build the deep muscles of the core. And you can see it's not easy if you hold it long enough.
No, this is not easy.
And the thing is, if this is easy for you, it's very simple to scale this, because you can just extend one leg. And now by extending one leg, you're going to see it takes that difficulty up a notch. Then you can extend two legs. It's going to be even harder. Then you can take your hands and reach out, and it's going to be even harder. So, yeah. So this exercise.
Like, also, what I've realized, this is a whole other subject, but holding my head up sometimes, I feel like as I've gotten older, it increases these bands right here. So are you still getting, now I know because I did it with my head down, are you still getting just as good of a workout if you're, like, you can still totally feel this with your head down?
Yeah, it'll still, you're still going to train the core. If you lift your shoulders up, and you could even, if you wanted to support your head with your hands, you could do that. It won't really matter. If you lift your shoulders up, it's just going to be a more complete, you're going to get better intra-abdominal pressure. But you can support your head with your hands if you feel like you need to support your head. That's not going to make the exercise any less effective. Because supporting the head, the shoulders still come off the ground a little bit. You're still getting the same benefit of the exercise. So,
and I love this as a foundational thing as well, JT, because, you know, as opposed to a plank, you know, not everybody can do a plank because some people have shoulder injuries.
Right.
Right? And this is working your core. But if you're flipped over this way and all you're thinking about doing is getting that lumbar spine to the mat and then going from there, you know, however you're going to increase the intensity of that. But everybody can do that.
Yeah, the way that you were right there, the way to think about a hollow body position is you should look kind of like a banana, right? The way a banana's got a little curve to it. That's why they call it hollow body. The opposite, if you were to arch your back, is called a hollow back. So your hollow body hold is supposed to be like a banana with a flattened lumbar spine. And the reason for that is that, like I mentioned before, that's going to give you the most support for the core when you're doing these types of exercises, these types of bodyweight exercises. So now from there, the next thing that I think is beneficial is to start practicing side planks. And the thing with side plank is you have a muscle called the glute medius, and it's a hip abductor. So it's a muscle that is responsible for helping to abduct or pull your femur away from the body, right? So the reason that's very important, though, is in addition to abduction of the femur, it plays a role in stabilizing your femur, and it's very, very important, the most important muscle for improving your walking and your running gait, both of which decline with age. And so you want to maintain stability, which is very important, and one of the key muscles to train to that end is going to be that glute medius. And the problem is a lot of common exercise programs, for example, let's say you're doing squats, two legs planted, you're doing squats, you're doing deadlifts. Those are great exercises, nothing wrong with those, but they don't primarily target the glute medius. You still need to take your leg and move your leg away from your body because that muscle is an abductor, so you still need to abduct.
Okay.
And
a good way to remember this, you guys, when we're talking about abduction, it's going away from your body. And when you're talking about adduction, you're adding it back into your body, so it's pulling in towards your body. So abduction is moving this away. Adduction, this would be an adduction when I'm moving the bottom leg. So abduction, adduction. Am I correct with that, Jerry?
And the exercise you just did, so that would be, a lot of times we call them a clamshell, right? So you just lift this leg up, and that's going to train that glute medius. So when you side plank, what's happening is you're also isometrically. Isometric just means that the muscles are working against a load without going through dynamic movement. So, for example, when you do that hollow body I showed you, you can feel your muscles contracting, they're getting a workout, but you're not dynamically moving. And so your side plank is going to be the same thing. You're going to basically get on your side, as you can see me doing, And the biggest thing with the side plank is you don't want your elbow to be at a 45-degree angle. You want it to be straight out at like 90 degrees relative to your torso, and you want the elbow to be back in your shoulder, in the joint. You want it to be retracted or back fully. So that's going to be a strong position. You don't want to be, leaning forward. You got to make sure your body is perfectly sideways, and that you're at a 90-degree angle here. And as long as you're that way, the elbows locked into a strong position, you're going to be fine. And then all you would do is you can have your knees straight. I like to do it at a 45-degree angle so you can see.
I'm going to get closer so I can see you. Okay, your knees are at a 45-degree angle, correct?
The reason I'm showing it this way is you can come up and then you extend your hips. So you elevate and then you just drive your hips forward, and then that's going to be the position. And you can adjust to get comfortable till you feel like, okay, my arm's at 90. And then all you're going to do, the beginner's progression would be with your knees down. And what you need to do, actually probably better if I do it this way. Okay, so you want to keep your spine straight, and you want to, the way that you compressed on the hollow body, that's basically what you want to do here. You want to compress your core. So when you're doing any type of exercise where you're under load, and you hear people say, stay tight, tighten your abs, whatever. The important thing is that doesn't mean suck in your abs. I see people often, they're sucking their belly button in, which is actually not what you want to do. You want to compress the core. So you just hold this position, and
are you on your knees or are you on your feet?
So right now, because this would be I'm on the knees, which is ideal for a beginner. If this is too tough, you can even go straight arm on the knees, because now this is putting more of my body weight on my knees through the floor. Mm-hmm. So this is easier. So you could start here. Once you could do this for say 30 to 60 seconds, then you would go here. And then once you can do this for 30 to 60 seconds, then you can go ahead and go on the side of the foot.
Right.
And then that's going to train your glute medius, all of the lateral muscles, all the muscles down the side of your body, which a common mistake people make is most of our exercise is front to back, right? So we're squatting, lunging, whatever, and we're not exercising through lateral movement patterns. So this will strengthen those muscles that are not commonly worked, which is why I like it. It addresses a weak point in most people's exercise. And because I want to make sure I'm not telling you to do something that I don't explain clearly.
Yeah.
When I talk about compressing your core, the best way to think about that is picture a boxer or like an MMA fighter, and they do it. So, you would think like, okay, imagine somebody's gonna smack you or punch you in the stomach. How would you brace for that? So you don't suck your belly button in. A lot of people think sucking it in. What you actually do, and this is why I like to envision a boxer, you actually come in a little bit, your shoulders come forward just a little, and you compress your core. It's not a lot, it's just a little compression. You actually, chest comes down slightly, and you're compressing your core. So that is the strongest position you can possibly put your lumbar spine in, is just that little bit of compression, and it takes some practice. So and maybe I could probably do a longer video.
It's like Kegels, you guys. You gotta concentrate on what you're working. So it's right there.
And that's a good point. Also, is that strength training or any type of exercise, it's physical, but it really is mental. And if you make it a point, like there's the old saying, and I know it's cliche, but how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So if you kind of look at it like that and say, okay, if I'm going to take the 20 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, if I'm going to take the time to do this exercise, how can I do this exercise well? And when you first, myself included, I'm the exact same way. When you first start doing something, it's going to feel awkward. You're going to feel like you're terrible at it. You're not going to feel, because just like if you've never thrown a football or a baseball and you throw it, it feels really awkward. But then if you practice, you get better and it starts to feel more natural. But when you first start exercising, none of it's going to feel like your coordination's not going to feel very good. You're not going to feel very stable. And that's okay. One of the ways you can monitor progress is week after week, like, oh, I'm not as wobbly as I was before. Or this is starting to feel more comfortable. and you're thinking, it's important to stay mentally engaged also, because there's research to show that there's the mind-muscle connection. Your mind is an important part of the results that you would get from training. And if you think about a muscle you're working, what they've shown is that if you think about a muscle you're working while you work it, you generally get higher engagement of that particular muscle. So if you're a lady and you're trying to grow your glutes, or you're a guy, you want a bigger chest, whatever, not trying to stereotype, I'm just saying, if there's a muscle that's important to you, if you think about it, you can start to feel it actually engage. You might notice, oh wow, I was squatting all these years and I never really felt my glutes engaged, but once I start really thinking about it, and I'll have clients do bodyweight squats and take their finger and poke their butt while they're doing it, like feel the muscle, and they'll start, oh, I can feel this engaging, and they'll get better at it. So when you're trying to target a certain muscle, think about that muscle. If you want to get better at a certain exercise, let's say you're trying to learn a new exercise, when you think about the external, so you think that if you think about a weight as an example, let's say you want to try to lift a heavier weight. If you focus on the weight and you visualize the whole movement pattern, you'll do better. Just like as an athlete, coaches will tell athletes, mentally see yourself doing reps, and you'll perform better, right? You'll do the exercise better. It's the same for us. When you're learning a new exercise, if you visually see yourself doing it right, you will actually do it better than if you don't practice that. So visualize the whole exercise to get better at an exercise, and then focus on the individual muscle contracting if you want to work a specific muscle more. Those are the two things mentally that you can actually focus on that will help your exercise.
Yeah, I love that. It's, you know, if you're somebody, you guys that you're constantly doing squats, you can do this for a long time, but if you're concentrating on the muscle that you're actually working, you feel it more intense. And when you're feeling like, you don't want to get on a treadmill and just like, oh, I'm just going to blindly walk or run, and you don't really understand the muscles that are working. If you are very deliberate in your movement and you understand what you're working, that muscle fiber fires so much more efficiently, which is where you're going to get the health benefit. Correct?
Right. And they find that from an adherence standpoint, people adhere to exercise better when they are connecting with it mentally also, because it makes it funner. Like, you're actually thinking, and it makes the time pass faster instead of just mindlessly plodding away.
Totally.
So I agree.
So far we've got the hollow body, which I love, because you can do that at any age. So the hollow body, just getting that lumbar spine to the mat. You can do this in various different ways, various levels, even keeping your feet on the floor. The other one that we just did, which was the side plank, you know, you can do this in various levels. You can keep your knees on the ground. You can put your feet on the ground. It's just, there's different levels to do this. What else do you suggest as like a foundational thing that helps us for stability and strength through the aging process?
So you really want to make sure that there's some basic movement patterns. You want to address the lateral chain, the core, which we did, the anterior core, which we did. Then most of us, because of the excessive sitting that we do, it's important that we do some horizontal pressing, which is essentially just moving something away from the body or moving your body away from the ground. And so we'll do that. And then also some type of row. The reason the row is very important is because we're hunched forward and we have our shoulders protracted while we're typing and things like that, is you tend to get tightened anterior or front musculature here throughout the chest and shoulders, and loosened posterior, or the back of the shoulders are looser. So by strengthening the backs of the shoulders, we can start to correct that, you know, they call it kyphosis, or that hunched forward, hunched back looking position, which if you start, especially in older populations, it can accelerate to where it gets, I mean, you see some people with very pronounced, sometimes it's genetic, but you see people with a very pronounced kyphosis, which, you know, ideally I'm sure you want to avoid. So I think it's important for everybody to do some type of press. Push-ups, everybody can do push-ups. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying everybody can do push-ups flat on the ground. When you're using your body weight, the most difficult exercise is always going to be when your body's working 90 degrees. Basically, you're parallel to the ground, so gravity's pulling on the full length of your body directly down. Yeah. So that means the regular push-up is going to be harder. The way you make it easier is you just elevate your hands. And you can put your knees down, but the only problem with you put your knees down is a push-up is a plank plus dynamic pressing, right? You have to hold a plank to do a push-up. The problem is when you put your knees down, now you're not doing a plank anymore, and so the neurological connections, that strength that would come from that neurological adaptation in a plank is not happening. So what I like to have people do who can't perform full push-ups on the ground is to just elevate their hands. And I have like a bench. Let me get this where you can see. So let's move this back a little bit.
And you guys, it doesn't necessarily have to be. So in other words, JT, you would rather somebody, I'm going to move my camera angle so you guys can kind of see here. You would rather have somebody do a push-up against a countertop than you would for them to put their knees down, right? Because at least this way we're getting a plank.
Yeah, and it's really just simple geometry. So I have clients especially people who have a poor power to weight ratio. So if you have excess body fat and you've not resistance trained before, you don't have a lot of strength relative to the amount of weight on your body. So like clearly doing a push-up on the ground is going to be way too high of intensity. So you can start on the wall, and you really can. You can press right against the wall, and that's totally fine. And then from a wall to a counter, like you did, each step that you do that lowers your hands, now you're changing the angle. So you can see now your body's becoming more elongated, and gravity's pulling harder on your body as it goes down, and a higher percentage of your body weight's being supported by the upper body, making the push-up harder. So that's exactly right. You don't need a gym, you don't need equipment, literally a wall in your kitchen. So like with clients I have that train at home, it's first start on the wall, then once you can do, let's say 10 or 12 with good form, then go to the kitchen counter, 10 or 12. Mm-hmm. Now maybe it's the back of your couch, then maybe the arm of the couch, then the seat of the couch, and then, so that's what I was going to use the bench here for, and the thing I wanted to demonstrate is you can alter the position of your hands to slowly increase the difficulty of the push-up so that everybody eventually can get to the ground. I really believe that because I've seen it. I had a 76-year-old client, she actually passed away, but we worked together for a few years, and she started out with hands on the kitchen counter push-ups, and she ultimately started with 74 with me. By 76, she was literally doing 13 push-ups nose to floor on the ground.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
So but it was a slow incremental process. So no matter where you start at, you can scale the difficulty of an exercise even without weights. The benefit to weights is that you can go, okay, I can curl 10, now I can do 12, now I can do 15, or shoulder press, or whatever the case is. Weights offer you a simple way to increase the difficulty of an exercise, right, without having to do a bunch of thinking or what I've done with bodyweight exercise is think about, okay, how do I take this advanced exercise and break it all the way down so that an absolute beginner who maybe even is obese and doesn't have a good power to weight ratio, how could they do this? And then that's where it's like, okay, well, let's start with this very basic side plank. And this stuff can get so all the way into human flag. If you remember Jack LaLanne, right? Human flags off of a flagpole. I mean, that same side plank we did earlier, that's how far that will progress. If you kept working on it over years, you could eventually hold yourself out like a flag. So
wow,
bodyweight can be scaled from absolute beginner all the way super advanced, as you see gymnasts do. And at the same time, your weights, 2-pound dumbbells all the way up to 150s. So what it comes down to is, what do you have access to? And knowing that, okay, I don't have access to weights. I live in a small flat or whatever, or I just prefer, like I've got clients that will work out while their kids are at football practice. Their young ones are at soccer or whatever, and they're like, okay, I just take a mat with me and I go over to the other side of the park and I do my workout while my kid's doing his 2 hours of soccer or whatever. They break off for 30 minutes. So the nice thing about this style of workout is it can be added to weight training. You can do a blend. You don't have to choose, obviously, but it can be done anywhere, and it can be scaled for anyone. So even if you look at my content, if you haven't seen me before, sometimes I do something that's really advanced. And I almost always make sure to say, hey, this is not this particular exercise. This isn't for beginners. However, here's how you start if you are a beginner, and here's how we'll eventually lead to this. I'm not suggesting everybody needs to do the thing I'm doing, because I've been doing this for a long time. But I like to show that, hey, you can do this, which is going to give you the benefits of the same muscles it's giving me, but because I'm more advanced, I had to start at this thing, and now I'm way over here.
Yeah.
Just like,
Which I think is a really great message for anybody who is starting out, or who is insecure about their ability, or they have past injuries, or they're just like, they've been out of the gym they've been sitting on their ass way too long. Anybody can start at any time, and there's never a bad time to say like, oh, maybe next year. No, start right now. There are things that you can do. If you can't do a push-up, like Jerry said, do it against a kitchen counter, and then you can work your way down to being horizontal on the ground. If you can't do a sit-up, the hollow hold that we talked about earlier is such a great place to start, because even this, without doing anything else, just lumbar spine to the mat, head off the mat, you're already feeling your abs engaged. So then you can take that to other levels. There's always room to grow. But I do want to say this, Jerry, with the push-ups against the counter, I still do those. I can do push-ups flat, but if I'm trying to get movement in throughout the day, I'm not even thinking about it anymore. If I'm in the kitchen waiting on something, anything, if I'm waiting, instead of being on the phone, I'll do some push-ups against the counter. I'll do some calf raises. This is a way to get movement throughout the day so that we stay active and mobile and moving, because all of that stuff declines with age, not just muscle mass, but the joint mobility, the flexibility to continue to move throughout the day, not just the hour in the gym, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that, but the movement throughout the day. And I think if the things that you have on your site are so inspirational, because you don't need a lot of equipment, and it's just about little movements throughout the day that get you functioning through old age. So I love that.
Yeah. And if you think about, so I'll demonstrate real quick. I think forward, you'll be able to see this a little better. So if you're practicing push-ups, for example, like I mentioned earlier, you're going through a press, right? You're pressing, the shoulder is moving. The shoulder should move from retraction all the way to protraction, meaning from the back of the socket all the way to the front. And what doesn't happen in a bench press is that generally doesn't happen. The shoulders stay pinned back. It stops here. You can see instead of the shoulder coming all the way forward. So one of the things I like about bodyweight style training is that you can more easily, or with dumbbells work great for this too, but you can more easily think about, okay, for example, I'm squatting. Your goal in a squat should be to squat as deeply as you can without pain, comfortably. And the reason for that is that if you look at a 3 or 4-year-old, they can squat butt to the ground, they can play with the toys, they're super comfortable, and see, so you got it. And the thing is, so can 80-year-old hunter-gatherers. They never lose that ability. We lose it. I guarantee you most people watching this can't do that. And it's not the fault. It's that we lose it sitting in chairs for, once we get into school age, and it just slowly starts to go away from all of that sitting.
Yeah, this
so
is how we used to work, right? When we'd be cooking something, we'd be basically in malasana, which is like this squatted, your feet flat, chest up. This is how. And you still see a lot of people, in less developed countries. They're sitting like this. They're working like this with their hands.
Right.
But we do lose this ability, because this is definitely not how you sit in a chair.
Reason, if people understand the reason why these things are important. So knee injuries are common, right? People start running, and I hear this a lot too. Like, well, I started running, and now I'm having knee pain. The most common causes of knee pain are lack of mobility in the ankles and the hips, and then outside of that, it's a weak glute medius. So when I talked about that, we did the glute abduction, the clamshell, and you do the side plank, that's going to address that muscle that I talked about that's responsible for the walking and running gait. That's the glute medius. So we want to work that glute medius, and We want to improve ankle and hip mobility. And so the deep squat you did is a great way to, this is going to sound contraindicative because if you can't do that, that just spending time in that deep squat will improve your ankle and hip mobility. But in that deep squat, how are you, like, it's like the chicken or the egg type thing. Right? So I'll show you a quick way. What you can do is if you've got a pole, like on your back patio, if you have stairs and there's a banister you can hold on to, or if you just get in a doorway at your house and you have a door trim, you can just grab on. So imagine my rack here is a doorway. What you can do is you can just squat down. So you can squat down and you can just keep your, instead of hunching forward, keep your spine neutral. So try to keep your spine as straight as you can. And just reach out and grab your door trim or grab onto whatever you're going to hold on to and pull yourself forward. So sit down as far as you can. What will happen is if you have poor ankle, what's called dorsiflexion, so if your ankle doesn't flex deeply here at the bottom, when you start to sit into a squat, you'll fall backward, right? People that, when they try to do the deep squat you're doing, a lot of people will start to sit, and once they get a little past parallel, they'll fall backward. If you're falling backward when you try to deep squat, that tells you that you have poor ankle dorsiflexion. So what you could do is, at the point you would normally fall, so you can start to squat, and if you would normally fall here, just reach out and prevent yourself from falling, and then pull yourself forward. The goal is to pull your knees over your toes and keep your heel planted flat on the ground. And you're supporting yourself, so it's perfectly safe. And then if you hold that position, this is also an isometric. Once again, we're not dynamically moving, but we're loading the hamstrings, the quads. So just holding this squat will accomplish a lot of things for you. It will increase your ankle dorsiflexion over time. It'll build the hamstrings, build the glutes. And you just keep pulling yourself forward as long as your heel doesn't come off the ground. That's the key. And you can just hold yourself in this position. And that one exercise will help you improve so that when you try the deep squat without grabbing onto something, you'll see it over time. All of a sudden, oh, I was able to get another inch lower. Oh, I was able to get another inch lower. Yeah. Until eventually you can actually sit in that deep squat.
I love that. So you guys, if you're not here, JT just gave you just those steps to be able to get there. It's about keeping your heels flat, and wherever you are, you hold on,
right,
and you work on it until you get all the way down. And this helps with the joint mobility in the hips as well, which will prevent injuries.
Yeah, because your hips, if you think about the best way to prevent, and this goes for your entire body, the best way to prevent an injury at any joint is to strengthen the muscles and tendons. Anytime you strengthen muscles, just so people understand this too, your musculoskeletal system is one integrated unit. So if you're making your muscles stronger, you're also making your connective tissue stronger. And so one of the things that I think is hard for people is, and you mentioned this earlier, if you get injured, let's say you have a bad knee for whatever reason, it could be osteoarthritis. Sometimes you can't do anything about that type of thing. But no matter what your injury is, all the research is pretty clear across the board that physical exercise and physical training improve subjective pain and everything else from any injury. So what I'm getting at is if you strengthen the muscles above and below a joint. So if you have a bad knee and you make it a point to say, okay, I'm going to strengthen the leg muscles around my femur, I'm going to strengthen the muscles around my calf, right, like calf and the shins. If I'm going to strengthen all that, my knee pain is most likely going down. Doesn't mean it's going to get all the way better if you have, form of arthritis or some kind of permanent injury. But you should take it, you should say, okay, I have a bad elbow. If you have a bad elbow, strengthening the flexors and extensors of the forearm, strengthening the bicep and tricep, that's going to reduce elbow pain. The trick is you can overload your connective tissue too much, which can cause tendonitis, it can cause tendinopathy, even worse. So I wanted to give you guys a few tips to strength train safely and effectively to not have that happen. So because I'm sure people watching it in the past, I was doing good, I was working out, and then I started getting my elbow flared up, and then I took some time off, then I went back, and it flared up again.
Yeah.
remember is when you load your tissues, just no matter where in the body, when you load your tissues, you need to load them, and then they need rest and recovery. And then you load them, and they need rest and recovery. So I suggest you do an individual exercise, whether it's lat pull downs or pull-ups or push-ups, whatever it is, 2 to 3 times a week max. And if you're new, so if you're kind of like coming off the couch and or you're just not consistently exercising, when you finally decide, okay, it's time to get consistent, I actually recommend you be physically active every day of your life, unless you just feel like you really need to, that means walking, just generally moving around.
Right.
But you should only strength train individual tissues twice a week for at least 6 weeks when you first start out. And the reason for that is your muscles can generally handle more. So you can say, well, I don't like these push-ups every day challenges. If you guys have seen those going around.
Yeah.
Not that I like that they're challenging. They have a daily goal. They get you moving. I like all that. So I'm all about the daily challenge. The problem is you're doing push-ups every day, as an example. What's happening is you're loading the exact same tissues to the exact same movement pattern every single day under a load. And so, yeah, a lot of people will do it and not get injured, and that's fine. But there is a non-insignificant percentage of people that will end up with tendonitis from that. And it's because they're doing the exact same movement pattern every single day. They're not giving the connective tissues enough time to remodel to the last workout, and they're already hitting it again. So if you start exercising and you say, okay, I want to exercise 6 days a week, I want to take Sunday off, then you could say, cool, I'm going to strength train Tuesday, Thursday, I'm going to jog this day and this day, I'm going to do yoga this day. You can exercise 7 days a week if you want, as long as pending you feel like you're recovering okay from exercise.
You're not deliberately hitting that same muscle more than twice a week.
Right. And then because what happens is, remember, you're adaptive, we're adaptive biological machines. So when I can do stuff a lot of people can't do because I've taken the time to condition myself to handle certain things. So like I've done videos before. I did this one that went viral, and I'm doing this 360 squat thing. And people were like, oh my God, your meniscus in your knees. And I'm like, dude, I've been doing this for 15 years. My knees are fine, trust me.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have done this when I first started, but over time, my connective tissues can handle this thing. So I like to demonstrate that no matter where you start, you can, so even if you have, hey, I had surgery on my elbow, I've got this problem, that problem, you can make all that connective tissue stronger, and you can recover. Most people will have gone to physical therapy and they're like made good progress to a point, then they graduate away from the physical therapy and then they stop training the joint, right? And then it never really gets better from there, and they think, well, this is just as good as my elbow is going to get, but that's not true.
Yeah.
It can get better. You're just not loading it to make that tissue stronger, increase the tissue's capacity to handle load. And so I think it's important to strength train your entire body, ideally twice a week. So for people that are trying to think, okay, how much do I really need to exercise? If you can go full body twice a week, so just 2 days, and if you can go 20 minutes, so 40 minutes a week, that's, for most people, that's all the resistance training. Right, and if you do it twice a week, that gives you like, okay, I did my pressing, I did my squats, I did whatever I did. Now I'm resting for 3 or 4 days. Now I'm doing it again, and I'm resting. Like, you're not going to have to worry about doing too much too soon, which is what leads to tendonitis.
Right.
That's where that usually comes from. People go too hard, too fast, because they want to get results in an accelerated timetable. Now, if you think, I really want to I like strength training, I want to do it 4 or 5 days a week, that's great. So then what you would do is something like, well, Monday will be my upper body, Tuesday will be lower body, so now my upper body's resting Tuesday, I'm not doing the same things again. And then maybe Wednesday you say, I'm going to do a core and mobility, or you could do like all your pressing muscles one day, all your pulling muscles.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that kind of stuff. Some days I'll do pushing, some days I'll do pulling, or I'll separate my upper body with my lower body. And then when I do that, I'll exercise in the gym like 3 days a week, but there's still movement every day. There's still some sort of movement every day, which I think is super important. And I think that we've driven that home. Like, you can exercise anywhere. It doesn't take a lot. You just need space. You know, if you have the space the size of a mat, or you have a kitchen counter, or even like getting up and down from a chair, having a sedentary lifestyle will absolutely take years off of your life, years off of your life. So how do we continue to move throughout the day, but also train those stability muscles like JT talked about earlier, to where we have better balance? I know you don't talk about too about single leg days where you're doing balance kind of exercises. Sorry, my camera's all off now, but balance kind of exercises where you're doing it on one leg. All of these are super important for injuries as we age. So if you guys have not checked out JT's site, he's JT Bodyweight Strength. You're on YouTube. You've got a big channel on YouTube, but also on Instagram. And I just want to, we're running out of time, but I just want to say thank you so much. I've been following you for a while, and I really admire what you do. And so, yeah, I'm grateful that you're here. So I'm going to post this to my main feed, and I'll see everybody else next Saturday. I won't be on here tomorrow because I'm leaving town, but I will be on here next Saturday. And we're going to talk about glucose. We're going to talk about these glucose monitors and how to flatten that glucose, that blood sugar level curve. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about next week. JT, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, have a great rest of your day, everybody. All right, bye.